Only balance is durable. Circularity, sustainability. Eating from the tree of life means partaking of only what you need, never hoarding surpluses or stockpiling for today what was meant to fund endless tomorrows. The tree of life is humility, it's sustainability. The tree of knowledge, however, we should hear as the tree of cleverness, the tree of manipulation and deceit. Eating from the tree of cleverness means undermining yourself for temporary gain at the expense of your long-term goals. Eating the fruit of the forbidden tree saws off the branch you're sitting on, but it saws it so slowly that you actually become emboldened the closer you are to demise. Like, it reminds me of In the Sun Also Rises by Hemingway. Do you remember the conversation between those two characters where one had gone bankrupt and the other one asks, how did you go broke? Because you can spend and spend and the funds start to look inexhaustible. And it's such a paradox, right? We can call it the Hemingway paradox, really, because the broker you get, the more heartened you become. You think, well, gee whiz, I'm richer than I thought. I keep spending and spending and I haven't hit zero. But then you do hit that wall and your card declines. Or as Hemingway put it, I went broke 2 different ways. Slowly at first, and then, well, all at once. That's the Seneca effect, or we could call it the Hemingway paradox. It's the fact that the way Seneca put it is that growth is slow, but collapse is rapid. The Seneca effect is how the chickens come home to roost. It's how effects finally reach back in time and connect to the causes giving rise to those outcomes. It's the way that you can be more confident in your 3,000th beer than in your first or second or third beer. You know, mama said don't drink that. So 3 beers in, you're still kind of circumspect. Like, is this going to put me in the hospital? Is my liver going to fail? Do they have to give me CPR? And then you think on your 4th and 5th beer and so on, Mom was a fool. She lied to me. She said this stuff will kill me and I'm doing fine, you know, because it's not until thousands of beers in that the cirrhosis comes or the cancer diagnosis. It's not that she was wrong. You just didn't understand the Hemingway paradox or the Seneca effect. The way that you can feel richer even as you're getting poorer. The way you can feel healthier as you're getting deader, right? The consequences sneak up on you like a snake and bite you when you least expect it. Genesis 3:15 said, I'll put enmity between the snake and the human. Enmity between our actions and the consequences of our actions, right? We're always trying to outrun the consequences of our own actions. But if we play with snakes, we will get bitten. And in our final moments, we'll see that actions and consequences actually were woefully connected, despite our refusal to see the connections until it was too late. I think that we could have continued to live under matriarchy, eating from the tree of life, whose fruits are pretty darn near inexhaustible. I think we could have continued as a species. We could have had a bright future. Our sun is still young, not even middle-aged. The sun is supposed to give light and life to this world for another 5 billion years, but we ate from the wrong tree. Yeah, asexuality is not without historical precedent. We lived inside of matriarchy, whose distinguishing feature is near total asexuality in order to keep population in check and keep everything balanced for hundreds of thousands of years. It's only been for 10,000 years that we have lived inside of patriarchy. And unfortunately, all of our documentation is inside of that span, so it feels as though we never were matriarchal, but we were. What we're doing now, there are 8 billion apes on this planet at this moment, just unconsciously copulating, because 10,000 years ago, we left the security of the garden. And the chickens are just now coming home to roost in terms of the outcomes, because humans have a great way of putting off the inevitable. We're fantastic delayers of fate and procrastinators of our own comeuppance. The thing about a garden is that it will only bear fruit if it's in balance with nature. A garden over-harvested and under-supported savannifies and then desertifies. And then, before you know it, you've got a barren Mars-scape of a planet instead of a lush, green-blue planetary Eden. How do you under-support and over-harvest? With runaway population. With humans turned from peaceful, solitary grasshoppers into a hive-minded swarm of locusts making off with everything that isn't bolted down. Asexuality will have to be the future of our species. It was the past of our species, and it will need to be the future of our species if any hope of a future still remains to us. And like I said, this is not without historic precedent. Asexuality is part of matriarchy, but sadly, it's been 10,000 years since we remember. And we don't keep very durable record, do we? Yahweh ordered that the removal of the Asherah poles in Deuteronomy 16, he removed all the Asherah poles and all the spreading trees. Sky daddies hate earth mommies. Sky dad says, you're not your liver, eat, drink, and be merry. You're not your lungs, smoke the dope. You're not your gonads, have the sex. You're not the buffalo, eat him and eat all of his children all the way to extinction. You're not the Native American, take his land. That's what Sky Daddy says. Earth Mother, on the other hand, says, advocate for the liver because you undermine him at your own peril. Advocate for the coral reefs and the pollinators because they're so integral to our food chain that we are effectively dead without them. Advocate for the things that support you because for all intents and purposes, they are you. Sexuality bites an apple whose consequences we don't understand. We should be very wary of our sexuality in the same way that we should be wary of our domineering brain saying that he's the master instead of the emissary. We should be wary of the impulse to pump mother's blood out of her body and then set fire to it and zip around in planes, trains, and automobiles on that conflagration. Mother's blood, that is to say, the oil that belongs in the ground, it was serving many purposes under there. Chief among those purposes was the sequestration of Earth's carbon. So she had that stuff tucked away in her veins on purpose. And here's man, characteristically divided against himself, at least in these last 10,000 years when patriarchy has reigned, where man says, my liver is not mine, my orgasm has no consequence, my mother's blood, these ancient hydrocarbons in the ground that power my vehicles can be just taken at will. What do I care if I commit matricide? She isn't me, my child isn't me, the bees aren't me, the coral reefs aren't me, the polar ice caps aren't me, to hell with all of them. We have to be much more careful gardeners. We have to go back to the matriarchal ways. I know that we'll have to call upon such deep remembrance that for all intents and purposes, we'll just have to shape entirely new myths and tell entirely new lies, but they will be truer lies than we have seen in 10,000 years if we can manage to do that. The UN predicts that our irresponsible farming practices that manipulate with chemicals and strip the soil from nutrients will utterly fail to feed us in fewer than 50 years. So what we're currently doing, the patriarchal gardening methods, now that this is no longer Eden, are imperiling us. That we are risking our entire species on this 10,000 year bet. You cannot feed 8 billion people indefinitely with cleverness instead of balance, with brain instead of mind, with intellect instead of wisdom. We engaged in arms races and one-upsmanship and escalation. Instead of playing nice, we multiplied our desires. Instead of humbly taking what we needed, we looted and pillaged and plundered and declared war. We ate the seed corn. We took for today what was meant for endless tomorrows. We bulldozed mother's trees to the ground, sprayed propoxer and acephate on her bees. We melted her ice caps. We bleached her coral reefs and guzzled her blood. And now we're orphaned and marooned on a hostile planet, a planet we made hostile. We desertified it by eating the fruit of the wrong tree. I think Mother would have had a lot more patience with us if we had worked with her at all. It's reminiscent of that Luke 3:13, I think it is. How oft I would have gathered you like a mother hen takes her peeping chicks under wing. The tree of life is probably still an available choice if we were to appeal to the better angels of our nature. They say that the cherubim with their flaming swords guard the tree of life now that we've defected, right? But who are those cherubim? Who are those angels? Are they the better angels of our natures? If we were to appeal to them and call upon the calmest and softest impulses within us instead of the loudest and most demanding ones, if we were to bank and cool the raging fires of our sexuality and stop it with all the wine and the cigarettes and the doom scrolling and waging war against our own bodies and sleepwalking through life, and if we'd stop consuming and compulsively buying, is it possible we could still get into the sort of sackcloth and ashes? Maybe now is the time to fast and mourn because we killed our mother, and we have to mourn that. I think that when Nietzsche declared God dead, he got it right, but he got the gender wrong. Yahweh is still alive and well. He's the sky god. He always has been the god of anger and jealousy. He tells us right there in the written word that he's a jealous god. He loves division. He loves cannibalization. No, he's not the god that we killed. We killed Mother Eden. And she was vast. She supported our species for 290,000 years. Patriarchy is a recent invention. It really makes you wonder, like Nietzsche had wondered. He said, how did we have the technology to take a sponge and wipe away the entire horizon of our future? Are we not now plunging into darkness, he asked. Do we not feel that it's gotten colder? Is it not a long, dark night that's closing in all around us? Do we hear the sound of grave diggers burying the corpse of Mother God? Still his quote, but now I've feminized it. Do we smell nothing of divine decomposition? God's too decomposed, Nietzsche said, and she is dead, and we killed her.